I'm going to read a short story called Feed Machine. I was impatient because my therapist, whose name was Melba, asked me to arrive at her home office at 11:45, and when I arrived at 11:44, she was around back throwing seed at 2 ducks floating in her above-ground pool. The ducks floated still like buoys and did not react to the seed. Melba shouted, "You know you want it," and threw another handful of seed at the ducks, and the seed was tossed back at her by the wind. I normally saw Melba on Thursdays, but this was a Saturday. She'd asked me to join her and another patient with a similar problem to mine on an excursion in lieu of my usual weekly appointment. The excursion was a trip to the Science Center where we would view an exhibit called The Living Body. The other patient's name was Nevaeh, like heaven backwards, and she was 9. Nevaeh was a patient of Melba's, but she was also Melba's granddaughter. Nevaeh's mother had terminal brain cancer and was scheduled to die. On the way to the Living Body exhibit, Nevaeh and I sat in the back of Melba's Jeep and didn't look at each other. Melba let us take turns choosing songs on her MP3 player, which she transmitted to an FM adapter in her cigarette lighter receptacle. I chose Season of the Witch by Donovan, and Nevaeh chose Hurdy-Gurdy Man, also by Donovan, because I guess she didn't know any of the artists in Melba's music library. The songs came through very weakly and with a lot of static. "Good choice," I said to Nevaeh, and she said nothing. Melba paid for Nevaeh's ticket to the Living Body exhibit, and I paid for my own. Nevaeh followed us around the circuit of displays with her hands cupped around her eyes like blinders, so she would not see anything she did not want to see. She communicated to Melba by whispering and mostly ignored me. Nevaeh had a small black agenda she carried with her. In the agenda, Melba made Nevaeh write a small letter B each time she binged and a small letter P each time she purged. Before we entered the exhibition room, Nevaeh opened her agenda and drew a small circle, or perhaps a letter O, or perhaps a numeral 0 under that current day's date. There was other, neater writing in the agenda that said things like chicken breast, hot dog, and Gatorade. It was adult cursive, but not like Melba's, which I knew from my tax receipts. I wondered if Nevaeh's terminal mother kept track of Nevaeh's food diary for her, and how all of that would go moving forward, and I felt depressed. I wondered what Nevaeh talked about in her sessions with Melba. Once in a session, Melba asked me if I was uncomfortable with my sexuality, and I said yes. She asked me what sorts of things made me uncomfortable, and I said certain phrases. And she said, like what? And I hesitated, and she said, go on, and I said, when somebody says, let me see that. And she said, let me see that what? And I said, I don't want to say. And she said, let me see that. And I said, that. And she said, that. And I said, pussy. Melba said that sexual avoidance and preoccupation with weight are related for some people, and that I was one of those people. She said that it was important to pay attention to what did and didn't make me uncomfortable. Then we watched Goodbye to Love, the movie about Karen Carpenter and how she died from being anorexic, and I thought about how my voice had cracked earlier when I said pussy, and how that had made me uncomfortable. Melba asked me at the end of the session to say, let me see that pussy out loud, and I did it. Let me see that pussy, I said to Melba, and she said, good. I liked having Nevaeh with us because it meant that Melba wouldn't talk to me about Karen Carpenter or about men. Instead, she asked Nevaeh yes or no questions about school, and Nevaeh nodded or shook her head. Melba asked Nevaeh if she had any plans to see her friends that weekend, and Nevaeh shook her head no. I like your macrame bracelet, I said to Nevaeh, because I wanted to make her feel not ugly. She smiled ferociously and then slapped her hands over her mouth. Melba said, look, and pointed to a glass case. Inside was an artificial cross-section of a human body. The display was labeled Feed Machine. Melba said, Feed Machine. Nevaeh looked deeply sad approaching the feed machine. She returned her hands to the sides of her face and then turned her head to the side so as not to see the feed machine. Hold Nevaeh's hand while I'm in the bathroom, said Melba. I reached for Nevaeh's hand and she put it inside of mine, which was much larger than hers. She had dry skin with red sores on her knuckles and around her fingernails. Her cuticles were torn and bloody and her nails were bitten down to the quick. I held her hand very gently and it felt at risk of slipping right out. It also felt like holding on to a crumpled paper bag. Nevaeh, I said, and Nevaeh turned her head away from me, but wrapped her fingers around my hand to suggest that she was listening. I hate the feed machine. Nevaeh, I could tell, did another one of her ferocious smiles. I said, the feed machine is our enemy. Nevaeh turned her head back to me and tilted it up in the way she tilted it at Melba when she wanted to whisper to her. I leaned down so Nevaeh could whisper to me, and she very quietly whispered, yes. I want the feed machine to feel the immense pain that we feel, I said to Nevaeh, plus some. Melba returned from the bathroom. Do you want to feed the feed machine, she said. She rubbed her hands together in excitement like a villain. Yes, I said, we do. There was a spout on the left of the glass case around the machine, and beside the spout was a bowl of produce. Nevaeh was too small to reach the produce, so I picked out a green apple and gave it to her, and picked out a green bell pepper for myself, and Melba picked out a peach. Melba dropped her peach into the spout, and a conveyor belt delivered the peach into the artificial body's cross-sectional mouth, and the peach was ground up by a series of gears and rotating barbed metal cylinders inside of the torso. The machine made a chopping noise when it processed the peach pit. Nevaeh covered her ears and turned away. Help Nevaeh feed the machine, said Melba. Okay, I said. I lifted Nevaeh so that she could drop her green apple into the spout, and then I put her down. I wanted to apologize for controlling her, but she had heard Melba tell me to do it, so I felt that she understood. Nevaeh's apple was processed by the machine and moved through the system shortly after the peach. The peach now was near the bottom of the intestines, and it was no longer recognizably a peach, but more of a wet brown mass. The wet brown mass of peach matter arrived at the end of the intestine, the ass, and was dispensed into an ovular hole in the floor beneath the artificial ass. It was then followed by Nevaeh's apple. I put my green bell pepper back into the bowl of produce. Look at that system, said Melba. The way she said that system reminded me of how I'd said that pussy to her. This pussy, I thought to myself. Fuck this pussy. I imagined a similar machine to the feed machine called the fuck machine in another more private area of the living body exhibit. Do you want to fuck the fuck machine, Melba would say. Yes, I would say. I want that cock to fuck this pussy. Another small girl, who probably was Nevaeh's same age, pressed her face against the glass case on the opposite side from us, and her nose got scrunched up like a pig's. The other girl was fairly overweight, which was fine, but I did notice. Nevaeh also pressed her face against the glass and scrunched her nose into a pig's nose and put her dry, bloody hands flat on the glass also, and the girls stared at one another, and I looked away so that they could live their lives. Melba was reading a program brochure she'd taken from the lobby. She showed it to me and pointed at the middle page and read, The Body in Society, 1230. I think, I said, that I will go with Nevaeh to the food court while you watch The Body in Society, if that is okay. Yes, Melba said, great idea. When Nevaeh heard me say her name, she backed away from the glass and turned to me. The other girl was gone. I walked Nevaeh out of the main exhibition room directly through the crowd of other visitors so that she would not need her blinders and would not see anything she did not want to see. In the food court, I ordered 4 square-shaped slices of pepperoni pizza and 2 Cokes and 1 slice of Oreo cheesecake to go, and held the to-go container in one hand and held onto Nevaeh's scaly hand with my other hand. I want to kill the feed machine, I said to Nevaeh. She looked up at my face and then at the to-go container. Then Nevaeh pulled her hand out of my hand. I worried I'd upset her by saying the word kill. I'm sorry for being hostile, I said. The feed machine makes me feel worked up. Nevaeh shook her arm violently, the one attached to the hand I'd been holding. Her macrame bracelet fell off onto the floor, and she bent and picked it up and held it out to me. Thank you, I said, and I put her macrame bracelet on my wrist, and it fit. I felt immense relief that the bracelet was not too small for me. If the bracelet had not fit, I would have felt that I had let Nevaeh down by being overweight, like the young girl on the other side of the glass case. Nevaeh tilted her head as if to whisper again, and I leaned forward, and she said nothing. She had changed her mind. I'm going to make the machine have a letter B, I said. and then we will write it in the machine's agenda. Nevaeh scratched at the back of her hand and it started to bleed. She put the skin up to her mouth and sucked on it. I looked away so that she would feel like I had not noticed. The other girl returned to the feed machine. She came to stand at Nevaeh's side, and Nevaeh continued to suck on her hand skin. I felt respectfully invisible to the two of them. I opened the to-go container and stacked the 4 square-shaped slices of pizza on top of one another like book pages, like an agenda full of letter B's. I put all 4 into the feed machine's spout, and then I opened the Coke cans and poured Coke into the spout, and then I fed the machine the slice of Oreo cheesecake. Melba approached the glass case. The body in society, she said, fascinating. The body can be an instrument of freedom, or it can be a prison. Like a glass case, I said, the feed machine is in double prison for being bad. Melba looked into the glass case at the feed machine. Yum, she said, it's the machine's lucky day. I thought about Melba feeding the feed machine seed like the ducks in her pool. Nevaeh pulled at the macrame bracelet around my wrist. I took it off and returned it to her, and she offered it to the other girl. The other girl held out her hand so Nevaeh could put the bracelet on her, but the bracelet was too small for the other girl's wrist. Nevaeh's hands worked like gory spiders, unraveling the macrame and then tying a series of chunky knots around the other girl's wrist. It was tight like the string tied around a pot roast. I wondered if Nevaeh tied it so tight to punish the girl, but the girl looked at the macrame bracelet on her wrist and grinned, and Nevaeh grinned and whispered something to the girl. Melba and the girls and I stood around the exhibit's case with our faces pressed up against the glass. The mass worked its way through the intestines, and the machine made a sound like an audience cheering underwater, drowning. The binge food reached the end of the system, and the feed machine took a large but normal shit into the hole at the bottom of the display. I wanted to laugh, but no one else did, so I stayed still like the ducks being rained on by sea. Thank you.